Hi friends, welcome back and welcome if you're new. My name's Jess or Jeffy and we're back with another episode of Where Are They Now and a History of. And today we're doing the Oldie family. We're going to jump straight into it. We've only got The Sims 2 to go off of with the Oldie family. And the family bio reads, the Oldies are simply one of the nicest families around. Their years together through good and bad have made them into wonderful parents and grandparents that they are today. There's 4 generations, but there's only Herb, Coral and Mary Sue living at the moment. And Mary Sue married Daniel Pleasant, which I've already covered the Pleasant. So if you want to go back and watch that, I would suggest going and watching it because there was a lot of tea besties. And then they've got their grandchildren, Lilith and Angela. So Herb and Coral, we're going to kind of cover mixed together rather than separate this time. So Herb's bio says that if being a crafty businessman, a loving father, and a reasonably reliable husband takes a lot of energy, then Herb Oldie has led an exhausting life. He is the son of Myron and Irma Oldie, who are both dead, obviously. And Corals says, as the picture of maternal perfection, Coral has raised a successful daughter, but at what price? She is the daughter of Bruno and Marmee Ruggy Byrne, I think it's pronounced. Who are also both dead, and she only has memories of her dad, not her mum. So it seems like he was the one that raised her on his own. With Coral, she's a family sim. Herb is a romance sim. But even though they obviously got engaged and then married, Herb actually has positive memories of that as opposed to negative ones, which quite often romance sims have. And he also has been completely faithful to Coral up throughout their marriage so far. Neither of them have met Daniel Pleasant, which I think is an error on EA's part because obviously they know their grandchildren and their daughter was married to him. She's not anymore. They got married anyway back in the day. And then you can see in their memories that they did woohoo once and then they adopted their daughter Mary Sue as a toddler. So from what I can gather and what I think that they want us to think is that they tried to conceive and they weren't able to, so they adopted Mary Sue. Mary Sue is obviously successful. They raised her really well. She's a workaholic, but we covered her. So you'll have to go and watch that one, besties. But yeah, they've got what seems like a very happy marriage. Herb that was it. So Herb worked as a businessman and it's weird because he's not actually retired. So he either quit or he was fired, but it doesn't actually tell us. But he hasn't retired. He has charisma, logic, and creativity skill points. Coral was a stay-at-home mother raising Mary Sue, so she didn't actually work, doesn't have any employment history. She taught Mary Sue to walk, and she has a hidden popularity token, as well as having cooking, charisma, and cleaning skills. That took me a minute to see it in my notes. But yeah, that's their sort of history of. And then moving on to what they've been doing now. So following when we load in, obviously they're in the family bin. I placed them down and then shortly after sort of we start off the playthrough, they took Lilith in because they wanted her to have a more stable home environment and a better sort of chance because she didn't get on with her family and she wasn't really given much of a chance by them. It was kind of shitty, to be honest. So they took Lilith in. They also adopted a little dog. Coral is a family sim, so she quite often wants to adopt animals and children and things like that and wants a big, happy family. Once Lilith went off to university, Coral actually wanted to help other children from disadvantaged backgrounds and maybe challenging sort of home backgrounds and things like that. So they ended up actually fostering and then ultimately adopting a little girl called Josephine. And because they wanted to support her throughout school and hopefully get her to college. But ultimately, she decided that it wasn't exactly what she wanted. She got through high school, but she didn't want to go to university. And she's quite happy, so they're happy as well. But they did adopt her in the end. One day, Herb was, a few years later, obviously, Herb was shopping downtown in Blue Water Village and he bumped into Florence Della Rosa. They got talking and they struck up a bit of an unlikely friendship, but actually they do have stuff in common. They became best friends. They sort of bonded over a love of gardening and business because Herb was a businessman and Florence has her own business. He sort of helped her out in different ways with like accounting and stuff like that when she needed it, which wasn't that often, but she did rely on him for different aspects and they had a really nice friendship. one night Herb was over helping Florence with her taxes and her accounts and stuff like that because she was struggling to get her head around some new law that had been brought in by SimCity Council. And unfortunately for Coral, things did actually escalate and they entered into an affair. So Florence had always had a bit of a thing for Herb, but obviously he was a lot older than her and married to Coral, so she didn't ever think anything was going to happen. But they looked at each other over those tax reports and then they ended up kissing. And things did escalate further and Florence actually fell pregnant. So Herb wanted to hide this from Coral completely. He was telling Florence that he was going to leave Coral for her, but he had to do it in the right way because she was older. They had like children, they had the grandchildren, they had the adopted child, like all of this different stuff. So he basically kept their love affair a secret. She gave birth to a little girl called Peony, who he also kept a secret. He did come around and see her quite often. And obviously Coral knows Peony exists because she's friends with Florence too. She just doesn't know that Herb's the dad. And Peony didn't know that Herb was her dad either. She just thought he was like a close friend that would come over and help her with her homework and things like that because she's a child now. Florence was beginning to sort of grow tired of the fact that he wasn't leaving Coral and she didn't think he actually had any intention of leaving Coral, and was sort of pushing him more and saying that he needed to soon or she was going to tell her. But what they didn't know was that a few months back, Coral had actually found out about their affair and that Peony was his daughter because of whispers on the grapevine where Florence had got frustrated and let slip to a friend over a drink downtown one day. So the rumours had been going around Pleasantview and it had got back to Coral. She decided that instead of telling him, she was going to get her own back. So she ended up deciding to poison Herb. So she was walking home one day from being downtown and she passed the church graveyard and noticed in there was a yew tree growing, which is extremely toxic to humans and Sims. So she actually ended up putting her gloves on. She'd been buying gardening supplies, so luckily she had some in her bag. So she donned her gloves and ended up taking different clippings home. She then started putting sort of micro doses of the poison into Herb's dinners and into his food. It didn't make him sick enough immediately for it to be like really apparent, and his health started declining over the course of like quite a few months, up to 6 months. It was initially declining, and he was going to doctors and none of them could figure out what was wrong. He was having all sorts of tests done at Lothario Labs and they couldn't figure out what was actually going on. They kind of in the end were putting it down to old age and just that everything was sort of getting tired. But actually it was Coral. She started upping the doses a little bit more, noticing that he was being more absent from the house, and she was quite angry about this because she knew that he was with Florence. And then a few months later, in all of the space of under a year, Herb actually passed away. He died at home with Coral, Josephine, his daughter, and his adopted daughter, and her boyfriend Noel were there when she passed. And obviously Coral had to put on a bit of a show for this because at this point she'd completely fallen out of love with him and she was really angry with him and wasn't sad in the slightest. It was what she'd wanted, but had to pretend that she was. So that's what she did. And then following Herb's death, obviously she arranged the funeral, and on the day the funeral rolled around and Florence did turn up but didn't take Peony with her because again she has no idea that Coral knows at this point still. Following Herb's death as well, Josephine and Noel decided that they didn't want to waste any time, and they ended up getting engaged and getting married because they wanted Coral there to be at the wedding, and Josephine had started to get worried that she potentially wouldn't be. Following their marriage, they lived together with Coral for a while, and Josephine fell pregnant quite quickly in quite a short space of time. So she's got a toddler and a baby at the moment. Coral stayed on at the house for a while to help them raise the little ones. She gets on really well with both Josephine and Noel, but then she decided to give them their space when the first baby, Thomas, aged up to be a toddler, and she moved into an assisted living facility. It's not like a care home. They've got somebody living on site who prepares all the meals and is around if they need them. But it's more of a retirement village, shall we say. And she's got some friends there and she's really happy there. She can spend her days painting. She's got revenge on her husband, which nobody knows about yet. So I guess we'll find out as she ends up in the cell next to Daniel for the rest of her days. And shortly as well after moving there, she found out that, and Josephine found out that she was pregnant with a third baby. So Coral is coming towards the end of her life. However, she is hoping that she's going to be able to see the children grow up a little bit longer. And whether she decides to tell Florence and talk about the fact that she knows about the whole situation, whether she admits it, she's just going to have to watch and find out. That's where they are now. I'd say happy, but Herb's dead. Coral's happy. She's very pleased about it all. Josephine less happy because her dad's dead. But she's happy because she's married and got her children. So, and she's got a good relationship with Lilith, who's basically like another sister to her. So yeah, that's the oldies. I hope you enjoyed it. You'll have to let me know what you think in the comments. Did you see this coming from Coral or not? She's been sprinkling his dinner with some herbs. But thank you so much for watching. I stream 4 times a week on Twitch. Every Monday is our Sims 2 Uberhood. It's different stories from this one. Every Tuesday is Zelda, Thursdays is Sims 3 or Stardew Valley, and Fridays is Skyrim. I'll pop all my links down below, and same for the Discord, and I'd love to see you there. But have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, everyone.